Archaeologists cracked open a 27,000-year-old coffin in the deserts of western China. Inside was a blue-eyed shaman, buried with a harp, a set of horse bridles, and almost 2 pounds of marijuana. Somehow, sitting in the ground for 27 centuries, it stayed completely green. The person who packed this tomb was leaving a going-away gift. Today, our government classifies that exact same gift as a Schedule I narcotic. By legal definition, it shares a category with heroin and is officially considered to have zero medical value. But this plant is not a modern fringe drug. The story actually begins roughly 12,000 years ago in East Asia. Right as humans were figuring out the concept of farming, cannabis was one of the very first crops they chose to cultivate. You could turn it into rope, weave it into clothes, eat it for food, press it into oil, or use it as medicine. It was the ancient equivalent of a Swiss Army knife growing out of the dirt. The way we view cannabis right now is completely detached from historical reality. To understand how our laws became so disconnected from the past, we have to look closely at how human beings evolved alongside this specific plant. Every culture that encountered this crop found a reason to keep it around. The explanation comes down to basic biology. Your body was already wired for the plant long before you or your ancestors ever touched it. Our bodies produce anandamide, a molecule linked to states of bliss. The cannabis plant produces a chemical that fits into these same receptors perfectly, essentially mimicking a molecule our systems already have a designated place for. Ancient civilizations figured out this biological match very early on. One of the oldest records appears in the Pen Sao Qing, a Chinese text traditionally attributed to the legendary emperor Shen Nong. It served as a primitive medical handbook, recommending the plant for treating everything from joint pain to malaria. By 200 AD, a Chinese physician named Hua Tuo was mixing the plant with wine, giving it to patients, and performing surgeries while they felt nothing. He invented a working anesthesia 1,800 years before modern medicine. But Hua Tuo was eventually summoned to be the personal doctor for a powerful warlord. When he asked to go home and treat ordinary people instead, the warlord had him thrown into prison and executed. Hua Tuo burned his writings in his final days, and the exact formula died with him. For thousands of years, early human biology and medicine naturally co-evolved with cannabis. It was utilized globally as a primary healing tool, completely free of any societal stigma. The utility extended straight into social organization. In the Congo, a historically warlike tribe discovered the plant and completely stopped fighting. They reorganized their entire society around it, renaming themselves the Bena Riamba, or the Sons of Hemp. Their standard greeting became Moyo, a single word that meant both hemp and life to them. As we move forward to the European age of exploration, the plant shifts from a biological tool to a mechanical necessity. The global expansion of empires was physically held together by the industrial strength of the plant's rigid fiber stock. Ships literally ran on it. The vast majority of the maritime equipment needed for international travel, the heavy ropes, the rigging, and the massive sails, were all constructed from hemp. The material was so incredibly valuable that when settlers arrived in the New World, early American governments eventually passed laws making it mandatory for farmers to grow it. Tobacco paid better, farmers preferred that, but the government legally required them to cultivate hemp for basic survival. Up until the 20th century, cultivating cannabis was a strict legal requirement for building and maintaining a functioning empire. Then the narrative abruptly shifts. In 1930, a man named Harry Anslinger became the head of the newly created Federal Bureau of Narcotics, a position he held for 32 years. Anslinger needed to justify the existence of his new department, so he manufactured a panic. He launched a baseless propaganda strategy, explicitly tying the plant to Black Americans, Mexicans, and Filipinos to stoke racial fears among the public. He specifically targeted jazz musicians, claiming their music was dangerous. He launched a personal vendetta against Billie Holiday, not actually for drugs, but to silence her from singing The Strange Fruit, a protest song about lynching that made powerful people very uncomfortable. He even weaponized language. He stopped using the commonly known term cannabis and aggressively rebranded it in government literature as marijuana. He chose a foreign-sounding word solely to scare the American public. The foundation of modern prohibition was built entirely on manufactured xenophobia and racism. Anslinger asked dozens of doctors for their medical opinion. The vast majority told him the plant was safe, and he deliberately ignored them. By 1970, Richard Nixon cemented this smear campaign. He officially classified the plant as a Schedule I narcotic, placing it right alongside heroin. Years later, Nixon's own domestic policy advisor, John Ehrlichman, gave an interview that exposed the hidden political motive behind that exact scheduling decision. Ehrlichman admitted that the administration had two main enemies, the anti-war left and black communities. They couldn't make it illegal to be against a war or to be black, but by tying cannabis to one group and heroin to the other, they could criminalize both, disrupt their communities, and arrest whoever they wanted. The ultimate proof of this political agenda arrived in 1988. The DEA's own administrative judge spent 2 entire years reviewing all the medical evidence. He concluded the drug should be declassified. The DEA outright rejected his recommendation and kept it illegal. The war on drugs categorization of cannabis is a deliberate, manufactured political weapon. It was drafted completely devoid of any scientific or historical backing. This timeline shows 12,000 years of continuous human utility. At the very end is a microscopic sliver representing prohibition. Out of 12 millennia, cannabis has been criminalized for roughly 90 years, less than 1% of our recorded history. For virtually all of human existence, it was simply a background utility. People used it to make rope in the morning, and they burned it in funeral fires in the evening. Which brings us back to that ancient shaman in the desert. The going-away gift packed in his tomb relied on a basic biological reality that we allowed ourselves to forget. The slow reversal of modern laws marks a return to our historical default, finally correcting a 90-year political anomaly.